Hi, so we are reading in Matthew chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Asha was walking on the Sabbath in the grain fields, and his disciples were hungry, and they began plucking the ears of grain, and they were eating. So if you look at my previous videos, it talks about the distinction between these ears, because there is a distinction between these ears. Now we know that the field as our Father Messiah speaks of when it talks about, because he taught the disciples as well as he taught the Gentiles about the field and what it means, because the disciples asked what it means. So he told them, and he said that there is the distinction. So plucking the ears of grain, and they were eating. So if you just think about that verse, it's going to bring you back to Mark 2:23 through 28. And here's verse 23. And so it was that when Asha went out on the Sabbath to a grain field, his disciples were walking and picking the ears of wheat. So we notice here that he's picking the ears of wheat. In the other chapter in Matthew, it's talking about plucking the ears. It doesn't say wheat though, it just says plucking of the ears. So, and then I'm going to bring you to another verse. Now it happened when Asha was walking among the grain, his disciples were plucking the ears and were rubbing them in their hands and eating them. So we know that in Matthew it talks about they were plucking the ears, but they were eating them. But here it talks about they were plucking the ears and rubbing them in their hands and eating them. So if you look back at what we were talking about in grain field, they're picking the ears of wheat. So we know that picking the ears of wheat is different than plucking the ears of grain and plucking the ears, rubbing them between their hands and eating them. So here that we are supposed to not eat wheat, and it is written here, picking the ears of wheat. So this is where he says that he just wants us to pick the ears of wheat, and we know that wheat is leaven. So it rises. It doesn't need anything, but it just rises on its own. And then plucking the ears and rubbing them in their hands and eating them. We cannot change the Word of God in order to fit whatever time is happening in the Word of God, because God does